In my ongoing quest to metamorphasize into senpai Zack and steal his audience without them even realizing, I recently took on a crazy challenge that not only Zack, but also various other senpais like Marquez Brownlee have taken on. I started saying yes to everything. I'll admit it, having just signed the lease on my new recording studio, I was drunk with empty surface area, greedy with gadget lust, and if I'm honest, I figured to myself, what's the worst that could happen? But then, the worst did happen. I actually had to make time to figure out how, or rather, if, these gadgets actually work. This is the story of how I spent the last 2 months testing every single one of the latest and greatest maker gadgets and materials from within the bowels of my spam filter. The good, the bad, the very bad, and the ugly. All so that you don't have to. Let's dive in, I guess. Growing up, my mother taught me that if you don't have something nice to say, then you shouldn't say anything at all. Well, I'm sorry, Mama Bear, but in this case, I gotta say something about the TwoTrees TT450 CNC machine, and unfortunately, most of it ain't gonna be nice. On the surface, the TT450 CNC machine looks like a hell of a deal. They advertise things like a large work area, 70% pre-assembly, an optional upgrade to a 500-watt spindle, and a touch interface. Unfortunately, at every single turn, this thing progressively turned into the bane of my existence. I was lucky enough to have one of my very kind Patreon supporters, Zack, come hang out with me at the studio and offer to help build this thing. Yes, the next layer, authentic unpaid labor immersive experience, is now apparently one of my Patreon perks. But we quickly realized that 70% pre-assembled was more like 30%, if the 30% that was pre-assembled had to be taken apart, tightened, loosened, and jiggled to make it work. I don't have enough time to list in this video the number of problems that I had with this thing. The Y-axis binds up constantly. The instructions are not clear enough, especially during the upgrade to the 500-watt spindle, which, if you, like me, decide to look at the marketing page for reference, shows the absolute wrong configuration, which will lead you to frying the relay. After spending literally weeks going back and forth with support, which I will admit was responsive, helpful, lovely, and very much open to the feedback I gave them, see, Mom, I did have something nice to say after all. I simply didn't have enough time to properly learn either of the paid software options that you'll need to buy to operate this machine. Now, a disclaimer here. I have absolutely zero experience with CNC machines or their software, and I've seen other YouTubers with much more experience using manly man tools than me actually get this thing to work. But the bottom line here is that while the materials seem to be pretty good quality, the machine and its design are not user-friendly, especially for a beginner, and even when I did get it to work, I couldn't really get it to work. For all these reasons, I give this machine a very official rating of dust collector. And if one of you wants to borrow it semi-permanently and try to figure out how to actually make it do stuff, drop a comment below. Up next, we have this SliceWorx 4D printed lumbar pillow. I'll be honest, I tend to cringe at anything that uses the term 4D printed because it generally means that it's a gimmick, kind of like superfood. I mean, what's the fourth dimension? My progressive time lapse from hunky 20-something to disgusting dad bod? But real talk, y'all, this thing is comfortable as fuck. When they offered to send it to me, I was pretty sure that this was another instance of a product that doesn't actually need to be 3D printed, but is because technology. And I was pretty sure that this thing could just as easily be made out of foam. But I quickly realized two things. First, SliceWorx, or Polypolymer, I guess is the name of the company, seems to have actually engineered this thing to take advantage of the unique capabilities of 3D printing, making different areas of the pillow have different densities, squishinesses, and shapes. And second, the unique mesh design of this thing is uniquely suited to prevent and/or combat even the worst cases of man stink. I live in Israel, a country hotter and more humid than a soccer mom at a It's really hot and humid, and no matter how many hours I spent pressed up against this thing with multiple 3D printers blasting heat at me, my back remained comfy and cool. But Just to make sure I don't break my streak, I will share 2 criticisms of this pillow. One, I like to use it just a couple centimeters higher than sitting on the actual back of the chair, so it would have been nice if they'd included some kind of Velcro or elastic strap to place it wherever I want on my chair. 2, it's expensive, like $139 for the first customer's expensive. And it's a Kickstarter, so, buy at your own risk and all of that. But yeah, this thing is pretty dope, and there's a link in the description. I give it an official rating of a happy face and peach emoji, but only because there isn't an emoji for a happy lower back. Let's move on. Ever since I built my Voron 2.4, link right here to my build series if you haven't seen it, I've been trying to get some form of a touchscreen to run Clipper Screen on it. Unfortunately for me, I've also been incredibly cheap ordering all manner of low-quality AliExpress touchscreens in an effort to get one of them to work. And then ordering all manner of cable to try and get different ways to get that to work. And then failing, leaving my Voron with a dangling LCD for, like a year. So imagine my giddy excitement when BigTreeTech reached out and offered to send me some of their signature mini rubber duckies, which apparently now also come with some pretty nice electronic components. They sent me over their Raspberry Pi alternative thingy, which I honestly haven't had the chance to test out yet, and their TFT 5.0 Raspberry Pi compatible touch screen. The 5.0 stands for 5.0 inches, which for those of you who don't speak American is like some bizarre unit of measurement based on some dude's body part somewhere. The BigTreeTech TFT 5.0 is a fantastic screen. The image is crisp despite not having the high number of resolution pixels that we're accustomed to on phones and tablets. The colors are bright and vibrant. The touch interface is extremely responsive, and installation and setup are, for the most part, a pretty well-documented breeze. I only had 2 issues overall. First, the provided ribbon cable is really short, and so it's really only useful if you plan to mount your Raspberry Pi right on the back of the screen. And I guess that's not BTT's fault, but you definitely should take it into consideration if you're planning to order. Second, for the life of me, I couldn't figure out in the documentation how to get this display to rotate, even after Googling and trying half a dozen different settings in the Raspberry Pi config files, until I figured out that you can just press a button right on there to flip the display. Oh, and I guess at some point BTT changed the thickness of the screen because the files that I found on Voron mods for a case are a little too shallow, and so it sticks out, and hopefully I'll create a remix when I get a chance, but for right now it's working great. Otherwise, this is the screen I've been dreaming of for my Voron, and at a shockingly reasonable $39, I can confidently give it a thumbs up. Unfortunately, things aren't as clear-cut when it comes to our next product, the NEJE Max 4 laser cutter and engraver. And I mean that both figuratively and literally. I struggled with this thing on and off for weeks, facing different issues like belt slipping, Y-axis racking, and more. Sure, the assembly instructions are reasonably clear. It's just that they are spread out across 4 different websites, a printed guide, and various different YouTube videos that you probably won't find, rather than on one central repository. Additionally, I found very little information on how to properly configure this laser to work with light burn. So if you, like me, are a relative noob when it comes to light burn, prepare to be overwhelmed and do a lot of trial and error for things like homing, origin, focus, and Z-stepping. NEJE provided me with their Max 4 model, the expansion kit to expand the work area to an absolutely ludicrous 1 meter by 700 millimeters, and the confusingly named E80 diode laser module, which it turns out is only a 20-watt laser. What they did not provide me with was a honeycomb work area or a compatible air assist pump, both of which are highly recommended, if not necessary, to actually get optimal results. In theory, this laser can be used as both a cutter and engraver, as well as a drawing tool, even vertically. So I had grand visions of hanging it up on the wall in the studio and creating some amazing artwork with the provided pen attachment. In practice, I spent way more time than I should have reasonably spent on one product in this list, simply trying to get it to work as expected. I'm going to be honest and say that most of the issues I had with this laser were probably some form of user error, from the constant y-axis racking to poor quality cuts and even unknowingly leaving off one of the lenses, resulting in a laser that just wouldn't cut no matter what I did. However, I think that this really reflects the main issue with the NEJE Max 4. While the hardware might be great, they've spent far too little effort and time as well as attention in creating easy-to-follow instructions on how to actually use the damn thing for beginners. NEJE seems to be aware of this, and they are working on creating a more cohesive and easy-to-follow instruction set on 1, not 5 websites. They also informed me that some of their other models, including the 3 Max V2, are much better suited for beginners. However, when it comes to the NEJE Max 4 with its $1,000 price tag before all the upgrades, and let's be honest, in order to use this laser safely, you're going to need a lot of upgrades, such as an enclosure kit, air extraction and purification, and so on. More on how important those things are in just a second. So for all these reasons and more, I'm going to have to give the NEJE Max 4 a very official rating of... Fortunately, even after struggling to get the NEJE laser cutter working, not all was lost, because I still had yet to test this product, the new longer laser B1 30W. Recently, it seems like everyone is coming out with an open laser design, from Creality to Elecrow and now longer. Setting up the longer laser was relatively easy, though their instructions did mix up right and left at one point, but my 2-year-old does the same thing. The laser has clear, easy-to-use features, and it's pretty easy to get up and running even for an absolute beginner. The manual Z-focus with simple acrylic measuring thingamabobber is a welcome change, because I personally never get along with autofocus or motorized Z-axes. What's more, the laser comes with a powerful and synchronized air assist pump, safety features like bump protection, and the 30+ watt laser module is more than sufficient for anything that you'd reasonably want to cut. I was able to use this laser, albeit without the wireless functionality, because I don't think that actually works with my Mac, with no real problems, and it quickly became my workhorse laser for my RepRap and acoustic panel projects, filling in the gaps where my Flux BMO was too small and the NEJE Max 4 was just too difficult to use. While I didn't test it on acrylic, leather, metal, or really anything else, I did do a lot, and I mean a lot, of wood cutting. Throughout this process, I took what I believed to be adequate precautions. I used the laser only in a sealed-off room with a window open and a fume extraction system sucking in all the fumes and extracting the filtered air out the window, as well as a normal household air filter running on full blast for the air inside the room. I wore, of course, protective glasses at all times, and I even took the extra step of wearing a full respirator headset headband anytime that I went into the closed-off room. And yet, I was still in for an I told you so lesson, reminding me that I should have just listened to my buddy Angus over at Maker's Muse when he says, open laser cutters are a bad idea. The day after doing the majority of my work with the B1, I woke up with itchy sinuses, and I proceeded to blow out what can only be described as a ton of black goop from my nose. Sorry if that's too much info. From there, things only got progressively worse until within the week I was dealing with a severe sinus infection, the likes of which I have never had in my entire life. We're talking antibiotics, corticosteroids, headaches, the works. Now, I can only assume that this infection came from inhaling the fine smoke particles so thoroughly blown all over the place by the air assist fan, which came through the sides of the respirator because of my beard. I feel like Augustus Gloop, you guys. I was a greedy little piggy grabbing all the free toys that I could get my hands on from Willy Wonka, and eventually I had to pay the price. The lessons are clear. First, I need to cool it with the accepting free stuff for a while. Second, the longer B1 is a great, easy to use, powerful laser that will get the job done, but as with all open laser cutters, it is not safe for indoor use, and that's not to mention the risk for your eyes. You should only ever consider getting an open laser like this if you have a large outdoor work area and plan to take serious safety precautions, such as building or buying an enclosure and an air filtration system to go with it. For all these reasons, I give the longer B1 laser cutter and engraver a sneezing sickness emoji and a hazard emoji, but also one of these, because if you have the right conditions to actually use it safely, it's actually really good. By the way, they also sent me their rotary module, but I hope you guys will forgive me for wanting to take a little break from the laser cutters for a while for obvious reasons. If you only ever buy ready-made 3D printers, then you probably take filament sensors for granted. But believe it or not, even some of the craziest, most over-the-top 3D printers, such as my Voron 2.4, don't actually come with filament sensors, despite the fact that they have huge build areas and speeds that can go through a roll of filament faster than a Lady and the Tramp spaghetti scene. Fortunately, the folks over at Dyze Design were kind enough to send me over their Orthus filament monitor, which not only senses whether or not there is filament, but also can determine if the filament stops moving due to a jam or clog. Installing the Orthus was mostly a breeze, and I actually did it on a live stream. I had to design my own mount for the Voron 2.4 because I didn't find one that I liked, but that wasn't too difficult either. The build quality of this thing is impressive. It feels super rugged and well built, and wiring it up was simple. I really have to commend Dyze Design for making super clear, to-the-point instructions for every firmware that you could possibly want, including Clipper, RepRap, Duet, and Marlin. I chose to go the quick route in configuring the Orthus and its settings, and I was actually pretty surprised to see that a little switch appeared on my Clipper and Clipper screen interface immediately after setting it up. Unfortunately, my initial experiences were almost nothing but false positives, which are a common problem with these types of filament monitors. With that said, the onus is really on me as the user to tweak and configure this thing to get it working right, and adjusting some of the parameters towards more flexible filaments did seem to eliminate most, if not all, of the false positives. As of right now, I haven't had time to perfectly dial everything in, so I'm still having a little bit of an issue where I get a false positive right at the beginning of the print during the skirts before the filament is actually flowing at the expected rate. But I was, however, able to test that it does indeed catch when my filament is stuck on my roller and not extruding, though I, of course, ignored it because I assumed that it was a false positive, even though I've pretty much got it dialed into where it doesn't give me those false positives. I really only have two issues with the Orthus. First of all, the very beefy, heavy metal design is contradictory to the fact that they recommend mounting it as close to your extruder as possible, especially in an era of fast printers where we all want to get as much of the mass off of our print head as possible. It seems to work fine on the other side of a reverse Bowden tube, but I'm sure that their engineers will point out that a lot of my false positive issues would be significantly reduced if I would mount the monitor right on top of the extruder like they recommend. Second is the price. At $98, I suspect that this filament sensor really isn't geared to, nor is it practical for consumers and hobbyists like me, because you'd need to save a lot of filament and a lot of failed prints to be able to justify that price. I guess that this isn't so much a criticism. After all, they do offer the Sentinel filament detector for just $39, which is more comparable to some of the cheaper filament sensors that you can buy or build yourself. It's just a heads up. I definitely dig this product, and I could see it making a lot of sense in a print farm where discovering clogs could save tons of filament, tons of time delivering to customers, and a lot of money if you take the time to properly configure and tweak the settings. But for us consumer end users, you're probably better going off with the Sentinel. For these reasons, I give the Orthus a very official rating of smiling money eyes emoji. Speaking of filament, let's switch gears and talk about these filaments sent over by SliceWorx, who was kind enough to send over a few different rolls, including the lightest wood fill PLA that I have ever seen, as well as a PLA color that is designed to match my favorite brand of tools, Makita. And yes, they have Ryobi and DeWalt colors too if you're into inferior tools. Makita for life! Though I do have to be honest, I was a little bit bummed that the Makita color filament was PLA instead of something stronger and more heat resistant that I could actually use in my shed or outdoors with my tools like PETG or ABS. Still, it looks nice and it prints well. As for the wood fill filament, it oozes at any speed and makes a bloody mess, just like every other wood filament I've ever tried. I'm pretty sure that optimizing retraction settings would fix this, but just scraping away the hairs is honestly a whole lot easier. SliceWorx Filament didn't really stand out to me in any way, either positive or negative, so I'm going to rate it with this facial expression. What? More filament? A while ago, Protomaker sent over some of their samples of their filament, specifically a couple of colors of PETG. Now, I've had great results with this PETG, and it seems to print better than a lot of the other cheaper brands that I've used, despite the fact that I definitely did not dry out the roll. Check out these beautiful prints I ran off on the K1. Protomaker is also based in the US, which might be a selling point for many. The only downside is that you're going to pay a premium for those American jobs, $33 for PETG and $25 for PLA. That's not unreasonable, especially with free shipping over $60, but it's significantly more than those other brands though. Like I said, I've often had trouble with cheap PETG. So I'm gonna give it a flex emoji. So at this point in the video, you probably realize that a lot of these products have been hit or miss. But you know what isn't hit or miss? The wonderful products and services that you will get from today's sponsor, PCBWay. No matter what project you're trying to build, no matter what type of fabrication you need, from PCBs to industrial 3D printing, sheet metal, metal 3D printing, CNC, and much, much more, PCBWay has you covered with fantastic prices, quick turnarounds, quick shipping, and just generally fantastic service. PCBWay has been a long sponsor of this show and these videos, and I really appreciate them. And customers that have ordered from them have told me they've had nothing but a phenomenal experience. So to support the channel and support those people who make this channel possible, visit the link in the description or go to PCBWay.com. Sovol recently announced that they are unveiling a line of filaments, and I was pretty excited to open up the box and discover 5 new flavors. Unlike the typical unicorn, vomit, silk rainbow colors that I've seen in the past, they've come out with some more muted Roy Kent type rainbows that hide their happy just a little bit, as well as limited color range ones and some awesome dual extrusion ones as well. Printing this filament was simple. Despite the silk finish, it had minimal stringing, required no special settings, and overall was just a pleasure to work with. It also looks amazeballs, especially this magic one. I give it 2 thumbs up. Okay, I promise, just one more filament haul. Sunlu recently reached out and sent me some rolls of their Easy ABS and some luminescent filament. I'll be honest and say that the Easy ABS clogged or otherwise gave me massive difficulties in every ABS-worthy printer that I put it in, from the Bamboo Lab X1 Carbon, which it clogged twice, to my Voron 2.4, which it clogged 3 times. I bet that if I spent more time tweaking these settings or maybe printed with more ventilation, I could get this stuff to print. But for now, there's been nothing easy about this ABS. So thumbs down on that. And I'll be passing along the feedback to Sunlu that this product may not be ready for a lease. With that said, the main attraction in the package they sent me was the luminescent glow-in-the-dark filament. I've never had a roll of glow-in-the-dark filament, so my mind went wild with all the possibilities of the amazing, innovative, fun toys and creations that I could print with my first ever luminescent roll. Then I printed a Benchy. I really cannot understate how much time it took to test all these products. Corners had to be cut. Though, in my defense, my son is really obsessed with boats right now, so it just kind of felt right. The Benchy glowed in the dark. My kid's gonna love it. The filament was easy to print, no surprises. I give it a rating of fun for the whole family. Just note that you will need to print this filament with a super hard abrasion-resistant nozzle, such as Slice Engineering recently released their GammaMaster nozzle, alongside some other new products like desiccant and some plastic repelling glue for your existing nozzles. The idea behind the GammaMaster is that it simultaneously is incredibly hard and abrasion resistant without sacrificing thermal performance and flow. So far, though I haven't pushed either of those characteristics to their absolute limits, it seems to really live up to both of those claims. I didn't need to decrease my speeds at all when printing PLA, PETG, or ABS, and the durability of the nozzle has been fantastic for me, showing no signs of degradation throughout printing UBQ garbage filament, video linked here, glow-in-the-dark filament, and more. The quality of the GammaMaster is absolutely top notch, and I love how they actually etched the size of the nozzle in big characters so that I'm able to see what it is even after I've used the nozzle, unlike the cheapy nozzles I usually buy, which have it printed on so that I can't figure it out. I'm really looking forward to using these nozzles with a bunch of carbon fiber composites that I have on the way. Oh, and I have to say that I'm pretty sure that the plastic repellent properties of this nozzle also made my PETG prints much less boogery. I still don't like printing with PETG, but if I do have to print with it, this is definitely going to be the nozzle I do it with, especially considering that high flow and CHT isn't really all that much of a concern with PETG. In fact, I think I can safely say that for any exotic or abrasive filament that has the chance of wearing down my CHT nozzles, this nozzle is going to be my go-to from now on. At just $24.99, it's significantly cheaper than other ultra-hard options such as the Basel nozzle, Ruby, and so on, and I don't think that you'll need to replace it 3 or 4 times as frequently. Drop a comment below if you'd be interested in seeing a video where I try to destroy different types of hardened nozzles for science. In any case, for the super reasonable price, great performance, and superior quality, I give the GammaMaster a resounding orange heart emoji. Up next, we have this Elecrow ESP32 capacitive touchscreen from Elecrow. As I understand it, which I don't, this is basically a system on a chip with an integrated screen, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth, all baked into one little nifty package for $34. I had to double check that, but yeah, it's $34. Using the Arduino programming toolkit, you can use this system to do or display pretty much anything that you want, running programs, creating dashboards, monitoring sensors, or really anything else. It's actually really slick, light years ahead of the Arduino starter kits that I tried tinkering with nearly a decade ago. Unfortunately, this isn't actually Voidstar Lab, and I don't know how to do any real electronics programming or hacking, and so the project that I was going to do with this screen is a non-starter. Still, my ignorance shouldn't reflect poorly on this product because it does seem to be pretty well made, and for $34, I seriously can't believe that you can get a touchscreen, Arduino, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth connectivity all in a polished acrylic case. So for this reason, I rate it. Wow, can you believe I'm still talking? I can. Many of you have probably heard of 3D Gloop, this ridiculously strong glue made by science hippies using chemistry and the dark arts. Believe the hype, friends. This stuff is sticky icky icky and regularly succeeds where things like super glue or E6000 fail. I mostly use their PLA version, but their specialized PETG version is equally permanent in all the right ways. This stuff ain't cheap, but if you got parts that need a glue in and super glue just ain't doing, I literally put this stuff in the video just so I could say that line. Check out the link in the description. So there you have it. 20 or something products, one very tired content creator. And to be honest, I left off a bunch of stuff that's just off video, like 2 Voron kits and a bunch of hot ends that did not arrive in time because this video is just getting too long. But let me know in the description what you thought of this video and the products within. And I really hope you don't want me to do another one like it, but let me know if you do. Oh, and by the way, if you do decide to pick any one of these products up, I'd really appreciate it if you used my links in the description because it really helps the channel. Also, I think that you guys will be happy to know that after this video, I'm definitely going to be cooling it with all the product reviews for a while and focusing on the 1,000,001 other projects that I want to get done around here. So if you'd like to support me in making that kind of content, which doesn't pay as well as product reviews, but is what I love to do, then consider checking out my Patreon in the description or just liking, subscribing, and commenting because I love reading what you guys have to say And I do this really for your approval. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see all of you on the next layer.